So we're back at Gully to Gully. Lots going on in Pakistan and Indian cricket. We'll get straight into it. Pakistan versus Australia to come, but first of all, India, New Zealand. 3-0 to New Zealand. If 2-0 wasn't a surprise, 3-0 at the end of it. A shock, a surprise. Some interesting decisions by India and the umpires, some might say. We'll get into all of that. Got Moin here with me. So, with all the controversy around Gary Kirsten and Pakistan and stuff, which we'll get into, Moin, or India losing 3-0, which of them is the biggest shock?
Well, I don't think there's any shock in Pakistan choosing a new coach. If anything, 6 months is a long time by Pakistani standards. So, I mean, that's no surprise there. I mean, look, India losing 3-0, I wouldn't have imagined this in my wildest dreams. Sure, maybe lose the series 2-1 or something, but 3-0 is a massive thrashing, right? And with all due respect to New Zealand, right? Now, if it were Australia that beat India 3-0, may have been a bit less of a surprise. New Zealand has always been one of those teams. Now, I know India don't tend to do well. It tends to be their boogie team in ICC tournaments. But outside of that, India have always had the upper hand, especially at home, right? In terms of quality, also, New Zealand are one of those dark horse, underrated teams. Will Young, Daryl Mitchell. I mean, they don't get anywhere near as much airtime as a lot of their contemporaries in other parts of the world, especially in Australia, if you look at the Australia New Zealand comparison. So for me, the one shock is to lose 3-0. And the second shock is to lose it with that scoreline to New Zealand, right? Take nothing away from New Zealand. I think they're a fantastic team, hugely underrated team. We talked about that in our previous episodes. So it's nothing to do with that. It's just if it had to be a team, I mean, I've thought I was looking back at all the various teams that have toured India in the last 2 to 3 years. I wouldn't say this is the strongest team on paper.
Yeah, I think that's the surprising thing, right? I mean, you would have thought, especially after they lost to Sri Lanka, that this would be a routine 3-0 win for India. And especially, New Zealand without Kane Williamson. I know, okay, fine, the first two test match, obviously they lost. And then Santner, who was the chief destructor at least in the third and the second test match, him not playing in the third test. I know some people will point to the toss in both tests, even the third. But look, at the end of it, both of them lasted 3 days. India had, a good chance to bat the bulk of day two. They had, they batted on day one. And it's not the pitch, that made India go from 80 for one to 85 for four or whatever it was, or that, So I think there's other factors that get into it. The only thing I'd say is, from a neutral point of view, I know some people tend to think we get some weird satisfaction out of this Indian defeat, but it's not like that. It's more from a cricketing point of view, and again taking into account Pakistan series win against England. I do feel a sense of satisfaction that the not traditional, but the older school Test cricket has prevailed over this Baz ball or Sharma ball or whatever you want to call it approach.
Gumby ball,
Where,
whatever. I completely
yeah,
agree. I completely agree. Look,
and obviously Rishabh Pant probably was the exception with his performance, but still, the way Sharma batted, getting out again, it just shows, and rather surprisingly to some, Will Young getting the man of the series or the player of the series, with 250s in 6 innings. It was a bit, you can question it, but someone with someone with more traditional Test cricket approach getting that award. So I do think, from a traditionalist point of view, it is a sort of win for, slogging it, no, not slogging it out, but kind of, spending your time in the crease and scoring it 3 in over rather than 5 in over and getting
some
out.
people may box it as traditionalist versus modernist. Some people just will box it as common sense versus no common sense. I know that sounds a bit harsh, but I like baseball, all these various iterations of baseball across the world. I think it's fair to say that Test cricket has been around much longer than any of us, right? Including Brendan McCullum and including anyone else. Test cricket's been around for hundreds of years, right? There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. Yes, the game evolves. Yes, there are skills and new traits that weren't imaginable many years ago. But at a strictly underlying level, the basics are always the same, right? The basics are always about adding value and preserving value to your wicket in Test cricket, right? It's about taking 20 wickets on one hand, which is the toughest thing you can do as a captain, and on the other hand, it's about preventing those 20 wickets, scoring, but yet giving, attaching value to your wicket. So, I mean, we've sort of moved away a lot from that traditionalist, again, I don't want to use the word tradition, but from that common sense, basic skills of Test cricket, partly due to a lot of limited overs cricket being played around the world and what gets a lot of airtime and spectator value. But ultimately, you're there to win. And in Test cricket, winning is not just scoring and like scoring at 3 4 runs and or 4 or 5 runs and over and doing silly things, because you can see what happens, and especially when you have that much skill in that Indian dressing room, that much skill, it's crazy. Like you can score at over 3 3.5 runs and over easily without taking risks, right? Especially with the likes of Kohli and so many others who are brilliant at rotating strike and keeping the scoreboard ticking. But it comes back to, I think Gautam Gambhir sort of admitted it. He said it. He said, I think we need to defend better. And you're like, yeah, I mean, no, like no shit. Like, like, it's like the first thing you learn in like when you're learning how to bat is a front foot defense, at least. Well, I mean, I can't say I had a very successful career, but you know what I mean? Like it's, and the fact that your coach in a press conference is saying we need to defend a bit better is, I think, really embarrassing. You know, there's no point knowing how to hit fours and sixes when you can't defend, especially when you produce turners, because that's your way of winning and your batters can't handle it. So I'm looking at the likes of Sarfaraz Khan and a lot of these new players. Look, Kohli and Rohit Sharma, we know they can do it, right? They're brilliant players. Now, Kohli more so than Rohit Sharma in Test cricket, I'd say. There, it's just an attitude and a mindset which this current setup is trying to instill in them. So if you just tell them, look, just play your natural game and play your old fashioned Test cricket way, they'll do it. My big worry is the people who've come in, right? Because do they have that defensive capability? I don't know. I haven't watched them enough in Ranji Trophy and all, so I can't say. But you can blame a lot of the T20 cricket, limited overs cricket, and say that, that's just a lot of game. And then there is truth in that. We've seen it on the other side of the border as well. But also, you have to remember these guys are professionals. Okay, so they need to know how to switch their games and gears. And if they don't have that different gear for Test cricket, which is the ultimate form, then they shouldn't be anywhere near selection in the Test squad. You can't pick your Test players on their T20 domestic league credentials. You can see, I mean, for India, it should be clear. You can look at what's happened on the other side of the border as a massive warning sign to you. So that it is disappointing, because I think India's batting, we think it's probably the best in the world, right? Or it's one of the best in the world. And to see them capitulate like this in home conditions just because they can't defend, and the fact that they had to get like hundreds of net bowlers from all around the country, and the practicing of the sweep shots during all the net sessions made it feel like this was a school team.
Yeah, yeah, it was strange. I mean, Safraz is an interesting case because he's actually come through from the Ranji circuit rather than T20. But
Fair enough,
even
yeah.
with him, right, and he's channeling his inner Shan Masood with a 150 and then a string of low scores. Sorry for making that comparison, but I just had to. But it's and people can question the manner of his dismissals at times, but also this weird obsession, this T20 strategy of matchups and left and right combinations. The poor guy ended up batting at 8 or 7 or 8. He
It's
said,
ridiculous.
okay, yeah, you had a night watcher coming in once, so that's fine. You can come in at 6. But in the previous match, they sent Washington Sundar above him, then they've sent Jadeja above him. The guy must be like, I've scored 150, and now I'm batting at number 8.
You clearly can't trust him to play a normal spinner. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, so I think there is some of that where, and the reason why they obviously did that was they wanted a left-hander in there, and they sent Jadeja ahead. who didn't really do much. But I mean, there's a case of having the better batter just going in before, right? Just for these, for the sake of these. It's not a T20 where you need those. Anyone can have a good day and go after the bowling for with a couple of sixes. This is Test cricket,
This is
and I
this.
do think there. I don't know whether that was Gambhir's just thinking or Sharma's approach. You know, the only reason they did that obviously was to negate Ijaz Patel and maybe Ish Sori to a certain extent. But I mean, it just didn't make sense. Yes, poor guy had a really bad game, duck and a one, but I do have some sympathy if you're demoted to number 6 or number 8 or whatever.
I completely
Uh,
agree.
so I think that's one interesting point. I mean, the other point, and we'll come on to Rishabh Pant's dismissal as well, which is divided opinions. Um, Look, I mean,
Even in this,
it's
or
a
even on this channel, but yes.
yeah, but I think generally this whole DRS technology, people are saying, oh, hotspot should have been there, but hotspot has had its own issues. Pun should have been, well, he was pretty much out previously, but New Zealand didn't review it or didn't even appeal for it properly. So that's everything. But coming on to his dismissal itself, right? Whatever it was out, not out, and on the face of it, people will say, oh, it was a game-changing decision. My theory, and that's always been my position on DRS, is that it was a 49-51 decision, right? People can say that. Although I do think it was out. You can see the deflection and all of that. But anyways, it was a 50-50, 49-51 decision. And I don't think people should really blame DRS for that, because that's not what DRS is for,
Correct.
right?
Absolutely.
If he had completely missed it and it went up and the umpire gave it out, then fine. Or the other way around, where he had nicked it, clearly, and the umpire had given it not out, and then using it. Then you can, that's why DRS is there for. These
It's
marginal
there for Howden,
decisions,
right? It's there for
yeah,
Howden.
exactly. So from that point of view, you can say the benefit of the doubt goes to the batter, or was there sufficient evidence to overturn the decision? Maybe. But if you look at the spike on the thing, you can see like 2 or 3 different spikes at the same time. So that makes a case for the sound on the bat hitting the pad, and then the ball hitting the bat. But still, it was a pretty marginal decision. That's my take on it.
So, look, firstly, the idea of is there enough evidence to overturn the decision is bogus, because that decision on field is by a human. Okay, there is no way, right? And I remember there used to be a time, but now they've removed, which is a soft signal, right? And is there enough conclusive evidence to overturn that soft decision? In this case, it's a classic case of the umpire making a decision that's been reviewed. I don't believe that a human should stand precedent to or in ahead in the pecking order compared to technology. That's the first thing. For me, I believe that benefit of doubt in the case of 51-49 decisions should ideally go to the batter. My belief is not that it goes to the umpire, because that's how, and unfortunately we're in a world where there are two principles in cricket that are at loggerheads with each other. The first is the old-fashioned principle of benefit of doubt must go to the batter, and then it's the more modern concept of enough evidence on technology to overturn the on-field decision, and that is to preserve the integrity of the umpires out there in the field, right? To ensure that they have a say. Otherwise, they become redundant. I don't think the second is a valid point here, because I feel the batter only gets one chance. He only gets one chance, right? A bowler can go back and bowl again. A batter goes back to the pavilion and that's his game done, or that's his innings done. So that there is a slight difference. Now, I'm talking more generally. I'm not coming into this decision. I'm talking more generally. So if there is a 51-49, I think I believe that the batter should take priority, not the umpire. Okay, whether or not. Now, on this particular decision, when I watched it live, I thought it was a harsh decision. When I looked at it on replay, I did, and a few, after hearing what's been said across the board, even what you said to me, that I looked at it, yes, there was a bit of a deflection. Now, I can't sit here and say 100%, but even if but I don't think you need 100% conviction to get a batter out
Yeah.
also. right? There's a difference between 51 and 100. Okay, so you're seldom like, look, I hate to draw comparisons because every case is different, but if you remember Pat Cummins against Pakistan in, I think it was Melbourne, where the ball passed the bat, and it was only after the ball passed the bat that you saw a spike.
Yeah.
And because you saw a spike, the umpire gave it out. And a lot of the Australians were like, "Oh, that's crazy," because like, how can you be sure that there's daylight between bat and ball during that time? But the reason I think that's out is because there is no other reason that for that spike to have occurred. There was no pad, there was nothing. There was just air on either side of the bat. So it had to have come from the bat, right? I know it's not 100% because there was a bit of daylight, but there's no other reason for that spike to have occurred because it was a pretty big spike. So it couldn't have been little murmurs or nothing. It could have been nothing. And also, Simon Toffel came out and explained what we all learned in physics, which is light travels faster than sound. So sometimes you can have an instance where the ball has passed the bat and then the sound appears. We're talking about milliseconds here, right? So then you can see daylight at the time the spike has been picked up, but that's because it takes longer for the sound to travel. So little things like that matter. In this instance, personally, if I were the third umpire, I would have probably given it not out. And I'm not saying because, Rishabh Pant is a massive wicket. Any wicket, or any situation, I think it was a bit too close to call. But my belief is, if you are blaming one decision for losing the game, I don't think you should be deserving to win the game. Okay, this happens in cricket. A few balls ago, Pant was out, clear out. Nobody appealed for it. Okay, so these things happen, and my belief, especially in Test cricket, because it's longer, is that it all evens out. Right? So you should be good enough to win in spite of these 50-50 calls, because guess what? That's sport. It's not unique to cricket, it's sport. Right? It happens. If you are blaming one decision for losing the game, you don't deserve to win it. It's as simple as that, right? Irrespective of the decision.
Yeah. My only issue with the whole thing, and this is where some of the Indian fans might cancel me, and it happens with Kohli. I mean, to be honest, Ben Stokes does it a lot too. Whenever there's a 50-50 decision or an umpire's call decision that goes against India, they always give this opinion that, or this expression on their face as if the whole world is conspired to get them out. Kohli does it
Exactly.
all the time. Pant again, he was like, he was asking the umpire. The umpire is like listening to the third umpire, and he's like standing next to the umpire, asking him, "What's the decision? What's the decision?" And then he's refusing to like
You
walk
know,
off.
I'm so glad you brought it up because it's so true. It's like, who do you think you are? Like I still remember, and obviously it goes back to Melbourne and the no ball episode where, like, literally 2 balls before, Dinesh Karthik got a full toss. Right, that was actually higher. Look at the tapes. Look at the footage. That was higher, but because it was, and Kohli would ask for it, but because it was Dinesh Karthik who barely asked for it, and he had nothing, they're like, they let it go. But when it was Kohli, he was like bombarding the umpire and all. And look, I'm not blaming Kohli. Kohli has every right to ask for it, but there's this somehow thing that, like, decisions deserve to go in their favor because of how big they are as a cricketing icon and a cricketing nation. And the same with Ben Stokes. The face he makes when he doesn't get like a marginal call in his favor is like, he'll start like, abusing, or he'll get really annoyed, or he'll look around and he'll pretend as if he's been wronged, and like there's this massive Oliver Twist situation happening. Grow up, man. I mean, I can call so many instances. I remember the Daryl Hares of the world, all the past, where much bigger howlers, we like, not just Pakistan, but countries generally had to deal with, especially in a pre-DRS era, which is why I think Australia, and everyone still talks about India versus Australia of old. Like, that Australia of old won game after game without DRS. There were so many decisions that went against him. I remember Glenn McGrath getting Inzamam LBW 4 balls in a row, and the umpire like, nope. You know what I mean? And they still won by innings after innings after innings. So, if you are good enough, one, you can win regardless, and two, have some humility and accept. If there's so much talk going on about preserving the integrity of umpires, right? I think that applies most not to technology but to players. Like, you
Yeah.
need to respect when a decision is made. Like, when the decision was made, and I personally believe, and I'm sorry I'm saying this, I personally believe that had there been not a big hoo-ha about the no ball, the MCG, I'm not sure the umpire may have given it or not. I don't know. But even if he did, I expect Babar Azam and all, yes, you can argue, debate it and all that, but then you have to accept it. Move on. Okay? Um, Unfortunately, it should be the same across the board, but it isn't, and look, this is what I'm saying. Sometimes you'll get these decisions that will go in your favor too. India should know that, right? This no ball, MCG no ball went in their favor. I remember there was one decision in this World Cup. Was it the semi-final against England, or was it? I think it was when England were bowling. There was an LB. I can't remember now, but there was a decision that was marginal. It was umpire's call. But there's so many instances where this happens, man. Like,
Yeah,
you deal
that
with it.
happens. And
Back
then,
to it.
yeah, that's why, yeah, I think, losing time over these 49, 51 decisions, yeah, it doesn't really make sense. And this whole, it's just the approach and the attitude to it, right? I'm sure other batters also do it, but it seems like Ben Stokes is a particular one, but also with the Indians, I think it's become a bit of a theme. Same thing when Jaiswal got out. I mean, it was three reds on the thing, and he just was like, "How can I get out?" Even
You
Ashwin,
know,
he's gloved the keeper, played a really silly shot, and he's like, he's
yeah, and,
reviewed
and,
it.
and before everyone thinks we're going against India, I mean, I remember when Fawad Alam got out to Mitchell Stark, it was plumb LBW, and he was like, "Oh, what is this? What's happening?" And then there was Mohammad Rizwan at the MCG
The
when
one that
it
hit
is
his,
clearly out. For God's sake, I don't care
yeah,
how
that
many
was out.
times you rub your hand, that is as out as I've ever seen it. You just give it out, right?
Yeah,
You know, and
exactly.
you walk off. And the good thing though, he did walk off eventually, but like, the theatrics need to stop sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, this
Yeah,
is, and the theatrics have increased post technology, unfortunately, even though it should have been the other way around, but it is what it is.
yeah, yeah.
As you can
Couple of
see, I'm
more
still
things.
not over
Yeah.
Melbourne in 2022, but never mind.
On a lighter note, just to finish off a couple more things on the India New Zealand match, Akash Deep, he had a great series, with the ball at least, but I don't know what you would call this. So he got out, run out without facing a ball in the first innings, and then he was bowled first ball in the second innings, right? So that's two ducks with one ball faced. I know there's a king pair,
No,
there's a
no,
platinum duck,
no.
so
There's
I
a
don't know
word
what
for,
this is.
what is it? Zero from zero. There's a word for it. Is it
I think
platinum?
that's I think that's platinum, isn't it?
I don't think it's
But what's a zero from, like, yeah, I don't know.
two zeros from one. Yeah, it's like, I don't know,
So yeah, let us
but
know in the comments what it actually means when you're like
yeah,
two for one. So it's not it's worse than a king pair. King pair is first ball ducks in both innings. So this is worse than a king pair, but not, I don't know, like a double platinum pair or diamond duck. I don't know. Let us know in the comments what this is. The other point I'd question I'd ask is, watching this test series as a whole, right? What would the Australians be thinking? Is it time for them to bring out the fans and scuff up the Perth pitch and
let's
you
do
have a
it.
rank turner
Let's
in
get Nathan Lyon in the game.
the first time in history you'll have a rank turner at Perth.
Well, it probably won't be Perth. I think Perth are going to trust their fast
Well, the
bowling
first test is at
battery to
Perth, right?
finish
So
it up.
the first test is at Perth, right? So
Yeah, and I mean, I expect Australia's fast bowling battery to just come out in full swing. For me, look, I think it's a quite interesting point you make, especially MCG and especially the SCG, right? Do you think? I mean, look, I rate Nathan Lyon. I think he is hugely underrated because he'll forever live in a certain someone's shadow. But I mean, I think that guy is a phenomenal finger spinner. The issue is, unfortunately, in Australia, and this is why I rate Nathan Lyon a lot, is you don't get as much purchase from finger spin as you do from leg spin because there's more bounce on those wickets, right? Which is why Warne and McGill were fantastic, right? They've tried to develop Swepson, but he hasn't quite got there, So I think, unfortunately, when you produce a rank turner, one, I hope you don't end up with a Rawalpindi Road type situation, just like Pakistan did when they brought in Australian pitches, and that is in no one's interest, right? So that's just the one. But I think the good thing is Nathan Lyon has found a way to make Australian pitches work for him. Can Ashwin do it? I mean, he has done it in the past, but look, I think a lot of pressure is on India, even if you don't do anything with the pitches, because I think they've lost a golden chance to make it to the final easily. Now they have to win 3 or 4 out of these 5 test matches to
Four to
guarantee.
guarantee. Yeah,
Yeah,
four to
4 to
guarantee.
guarantee, but they need at least 3 to give themselves a good shot. Because I think the biggest contenders are South Africa here, because all their games are at home to, I think, Pakistan and Sri Lanka. Now, is Pakistan going to just uh, lie down? No, 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 no.
Not that they need a lot of effort to do that in South Africa.
Yeah, you don't need much effort. And that's the thing. You can pretend more easily in that you're actually trying, because no one's gonna cast an eyelid when you're about 45 or 50 all out in South Africa of all places. But never mind. But I don't know. I think South Africa are gonna. I think are in pole position. And to be fair, as a neutral, as a neutral, I really want South Africa to win some silverware. They came so close in the T20 World Cup, and to play in Australia, South Africa at Lords, I'd go to watch that. I mean, I'd even go to watch Australia, India, but I think South Africa just, have really punched above their weight. Everyone forgets this. The cycle is 2 years. A lot happens in 2 years. 2 years ago, South Africa were not considered a very strong test side. It was still a more transition side.
Yeah.
But suddenly they've now come up with a lot of their younger players pulling, like just raising their hand and performing. Kristen Stubbs, for example. So now suddenly I think they're a really strong team. I feel for England, because I think they've had some really good success at odd parts of the cycle, which means they've neither been successful
Yeah.
in the previous cycle and neither in this cycle. Had the cycles
This was a tough cycle for them, I think, in
was
terms
so
of
tough.
the
But
teams.
last time, I think Stokes inherited
Yeah.
they were like at the bottom of the table, right? So sometimes there is that's just a quirk of the system, but I like it. I think the first
Yeah.
time this system, it's wide open, this cycle, right? You've got Sri Lanka with an outside chance ish. You've got New Zealand now with a chance. Australia, obviously, pole position. And the best is you've got your 1 and 2 facing off against each other. So one will score points, the other will drop points.
Yeah.
I mean, what could you have dreamed of?
Yeah, exactly. For once, and that's why they made this final test match so much more interesting, right? But otherwise, it would have been like, yeah, whatever. New Zealand won the series, go home. But that's what made the Bangladesh India, that washout, so-called washout match interesting, and that's what
Woo!
made this match interesting, because you have the world test championship points at stake, and that does add value to so-called dead rubbers. So I think that'll be
My
interesting.
message to all Pakistan fans watching: forget what you hear on social media. Pakistan have no chance of making it. Okay,
No, no, they
please
don't. They
stop.
don't. They don't.
This
Yeah.
0.3% that suddenly starts appearing on social media, for God's sake, please. There is
No,
no
no. There's
hope
no. There's no.
whatsoever.
There's no Kudrat Kanis. I mean, you're not winning 2-0 South Africa. You can
Even
quit
if
that.
you do, I think even if
Yeah.
everything works in such thing, I don't think Pakistan can make it. I
No,
think
no.
there's
It's
I read somewhere there's one scenario where the rain needs to
it's fine. It
fall in
doesn't matter. It
absolute
doesn't.
hour.
Yeah. It's fine. Whatever. It's not happening. Um, but yeah, this is on South Africa. Obviously, the women's also lost the World Cup T20 World Cup final to New Zealand, of all teams. But on them as well. Again, Pakistan. You say Pakistan, obviously they're not going to make it, but they could have, had they done something against Bangladesh, who South Africa have also beaten by an innings and 2,000 runs. It was
I know.
which is obviously strengthens South Africa's position. But as convincingly as they've destroyed Bangladesh in Bangladesh, I think that is
Which
commendable.
is massive, massive, no question.
Exactly.
Um,
But go ahead.
Speaking of massive announcements, I'm gonna just switch to across the border. Gary Kirsten, 6 months on the dot. A bit too long, no? For
Yeah,
Pakistan,
six,
by Pakistan standards, 6 whole months he has stayed as coach. And the greatest
six,
thing is, zero ODIs played in that tenure. You
six,
know,
6 months, three captains. I don't know what, three different coaches eventually, and you've had zero
and 20
ODIs.
selectors, 20 selectors, a new Champions Cup, whatever you want to call it. Look, really, really disappointing. Okay, now it's a difficult one, because I can see there's a lot speculation. The key reason is Gary Kirsten spent a lot of his time watching and covering the Champions Cup. He was on commentary for God's sake. Okay. Why? Because he had a vote on the selection panel. You took that vote away from him. I have no issues with the fact that you think that the coach shouldn't have a vote. I said in my previous episode, I think one of the captain or coach, so more often the captain because he leads the team out, should have a vote. But the coach must be in listening mode and he must be consulted. He must give his opinion, right? He may not have the vote in itself, may conflict of interest issues with the players, but he should still be there, right? The fact that he has no say in the selection panel doesn't sit well with anybody because you need the coach's input. And two, it's the communication. He can't find out in a headline in a newspaper that that's what's happened, and then I think he emailed and then they say, "Yep, that's the new approach." I think that's extremely high-handed and not how you treat.
Yeah.
Forget World Cup winning coach, any coach. Forget foreign coach, any coach. Please stop making distinctions here between foreign, non-foreign. You just don't treat people like that. It's people who've committed and you have a signed contract with. So I mean, that's really disappointing. Do I think Gary Kirsten could have probably been a bit like Jason Gillespie in understanding and accepting that, you know what, this new selection committee did a few things right? No, because ultimately, nobody's questioning what this selection committee can or can't do. What they're questioning is governance, right? You must remember that Jason Gillespie and Gary Kirsten have slightly different pedigrees in the international coaching circuit, which also informs how they approach certain things. Just because one person was okay with it doesn't mean the other will be. There is zero governance, and it's hugely disappointing. And that's why there's no one who is clean. It's like politics also. Like there's no one who is clean, right? Akib
Yeah.
Javed, who is very worldly, intelligent, all, but when he gets into a position of power, he also caves in. He could have come in and said, you know what, we should handle this a bit better. There should be some governance. No,
Yeah.
everyone has their agendas. Even Ramiz Raja clearly has a big agenda. So no one looks and thinks beyond themselves, and that's just hugely disappointing, right?
Yeah. No, it was all very disappointing. Like you said, probably the decision itself, yes, is not surprising, but it's just the way everything happened. You got him fully involved in the Champions Cup, and then and eventually, the whole selection decision from his point, from Gary Carson's point of view, the whole selection change and all that was based on the red ball team's performance, right? It wasn't based on it was the immediate aftermath of the test for the first test defeat to England, where everything just changed. And as part of that, the whole white ball selection committee and all the whole thing kind of got changed. So yeah, from that point of view, I can understand his frustrations. Look, the full story hasn't come out. I've heard some people saying that the PCB is not to blame. It's actually Gary Kirsten, his unwillingness to spend more time in Pakistan, all of that, which they should have thought of that before appointing him. But look, it's on the face of it, it's something that was very poorly managed. But this is not the first time we've seen it in Pakistan cricket, and probably not the
Certainly won't be.
last. As
But
well, you've
now,
got a
my
red ball
worry is
coach.
Saqlain Mushtaq. Qudrat Ka Nizam comes back. Who's
Yeah,
front runner? And I have no issues with Saqlain. I thought Saqlain did quite well under his tenure. We did pretty well in certain areas. My issue is his conflict of interest that's now appeared because he's Shadab Khan's father-in-law.
yeah,
And he has been pushing for Shadab Khan to be captain as well, because of his Champions Cup performance. Oh my God, forgetting all his international failures. Um, this is where I get a bit annoyed because
yeah.
I'm like,
But it's
why?
yeah. But on the face of it, look, it's good to see that Shadab Khan is nowhere near the Australian tour
I'm
squad. So
glad.
again, yeah, so they've made that decision. The other point, obviously, is the whole Fakhar Zaman fiasco. The tweet. Look, if it's just on the base of the tweet, and people are now saying that it was based on like his
Exactly.
PR team did it or whatever. But I mean, you can delete it, right? If you wanted to delete it straight away, if you saw it.
No, it's just
So
a tweet, for God's sake. I mean, yes, if there's fitness issues, sure, but I've seen this play out so many times before where they blame fitness when there are other reasons, right? I mean, Fakhar Zaman never struck me as an unfit of all unfit players. I mean, you had Noman Ali playing, you had so many others playing. Fakhar Zaman is your only player with X factor. You're like, and I'm saying this. You 12 months go watch our videos, and I was hating on Fakhar Zaman because yes, I do accept that sometimes when he gets into a rut, he takes longer to get out of it. But he's not in a rut right now. Look at his last three ODI games: 100, 80, and one. But I mean, and that 100 was a phenomenal innings at the Chinnaswamy against New Zealand, chasing 400. So for God's sake, right? He's the only one who actually, in like other teams, plan for in limited overs cricket, T20 one day cricket. One day is his best format because he takes a bit of time at the onset. But and here's someone who gave up his original opening slot in the T20 team for the betterment of the team because certain someone had other ideas. Whatever it is, he's the one who instills fear and who oversees former players say is, like they'll often say, oh, Pakistan doesn't have that extra meat, barring Fakhar Zaman. His name is taken as someone who is Pakistan's best hitter and most aggressive batter, and he's given that respect. And it's a shame, classic. Pakistan don't respect players that internationals do. So, I look at this, and Australian conditions would have suited him so well because he's so good against pace and bounce and all that. And it's just a shame, you know. And this is again where I feel that everybody has their own agendas. Everybody can't take dissent. I mean, big deal. I don't care who made the tweet. Fakhar Zaman PR team, I don't care. As you say, he could have deleted it if it was a big deal. I don't care. What I care about is the fact that on the basis of one tweet, you removed probably one of your best players in limited overs cricket, dare I say, for a long, long time. So it's just, I don't know. But yeah.
Yeah. Look, yeah, I do think there's a fine balance between disciplining someone and completely, you know, like dropping them from the side, plus completely ignoring their disciplinary issues. Look, in my opinion, it was not the right thing to tweet about. It was just a
Correct.
tweet.
Correct.
So, and Mohsin
Fine.
Naqvi as well in his press conference, he was like, yeah, his main issue was his fitness, but also his tweet was an issue. So he's actually acknowledged that it was a bit of both.
Yeah,
If
and look,
fitness
you
is the
can find
issue,
him.
look, yeah, fine him or suspend him for a game or do something, but make him part of the squad. I don't know. Apparently, there's rumors that he might be reintegrated into the squad. So yeah, look, I don't know what the actual background, or the politics behind it was, but again, as everything in Pakistan cricket, and literally, the sad thing is the dust has just settled on the. It's not even settled on the the England series win, and you've got all these random controversies going on. I mean, enjoy the
I
win
know,
for
it's ridiculous.
for heaven's
It's
sake.
ridiculous.
The other development obviously was the captaincy. It was pretty much, everyone knew that's the worst kept secret that Rizwan was going to be the new white ball captain. It was a bit strange because they announced the squad, then they didn't announce the captain, and then they announced the captain like 3 hours after. So that was a bit weird. I don't know what they were trying to figure out in the background,
But yeah.
but eventually it had to be Rizwan. Salman Aliagha, who's been a key member of the white ball team in recent years as the white ball captain.
Which is obviously reeking of sarcasm, what you're saying, because he only played your last two World Cup games, right? So
Exactly.
classic Pakistan style. Again, I'm always a bit skeptical of somebody on base of one format getting the nod on another format. And also just the fact that he, you know, yes, he's had a really good few series in red ball cricket, but give him some time. I could just think we're rushing him. You don't really need a vice captain in limited overs when you under other than an ICC tournament. So I don't know. You didn't have to jump the gun there. I hope it's
Yeah.
not jumping the gun, but let's see. Maybe I'm wrong. But
Yeah.
speaking of like jumping the gun and all that, I mean, there is the Australian series coming up. I mean, you Pakistan have announced their 11. What are your
I was a bit
thoughts?
confused. I was overall the squad. I think I was happy. Mentioned Shahab Khan not being picked is good. They've gone with they've picked a few younger players in the squad, Hasibullah and a couple of others. Irfan Khan, the all rounder, again mainly PSL performances, but for one day cricket you can probably understand. So I think that's an interesting one. But then I looked at the 11 and the batting order. I was like, is this just like the four test against England? Because it's
Same
barring
you, so to
Shahid.
speak. Yeah, yeah.
Babar Azam's in, obviously, but you got Kamran Ghulam, who's probably the new Saud Shakil playing at 5 or 6, and then you
Yeah,
go
but I
Rizwan.
need him to play at 4. I mean, I've said this so many times. Rizwan is your number 5 because he's somewhere. He's not a number 4. I don't think he is. He's number 5. And Rizwan once even said that he prefers number 5, but they're obsessed with just Babar and Rizwan, Babar and Rizwan, Babar and Rizwan. You again in longer forms of the game, and ODI is a significantly longer. It's more than double the length of a T20. He hasn't quite shown his skill, and that's
Yeah,
because he isn't the most technically sound batter, right? ODI's number 3 and 4 should be your best batters, and you need to give Kamran Ghulam that chance. He's a top order player. He is.
yeah,
I mean, call it what you want. He is. He should be at number 4. Rizwan should be at
I
5.
agree. Yeah,
I know I'm such a minor
yeah.
point in the grand scheme of everything going on in Pakistan cricket, but sorry, I had to say it. Salman Agha at 6 is probably also a spinning option.
Yeah.
Irfan Khan Niazi at 7. I like that because I remember he did well against New Zealand in the few games he played, and then he got
Right.
injured, and then he got and then he got dropped out of consciousness because Usman Khan's big sacrifice had to be prioritized. But now
Yeah.
they're going with talent and performance.
Yeah, but
Usman
then it's
Khan
it's 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 what after it's what after Irfan Khan that's surprising, right? Because okay, he's a fast bowling all rounder, but then you have four other fast bowlers playing, which makes it a bit weird in my opinion,
yeah, it is
because
true.
you've got a very weird balance.
I think I look. I mean, yeah, you've got 5 fast bowlers and Salman Agha, right? And maybe Sam Ayub if you back him, which clearly you haven't in a long. He bowls 1 2 overs. Although I do think he's underrated as a bowler. So yeah, it's a bit odd. It's a bit odd. I think they are positioning him more as trying to groom him as a hitter, with bowling being, oh, by the way, he also bowls. I think if he's your best finisher and he's in the team on that basis, fine. I accept that. Right. And his so you can't drop him even though he's your best finisher because he doesn't make sense from the balance of the team perspective. So I think that's if he's there as a finisher, then I accept the decision and I wish him the best. But I was happy not to see Usman Khan because I thought he looked very average on the top tier of cricket, unfortunately. Like I know apparently he's a really good late cutter, but it seemed as if every ball he wanted to play as a late cut, even if it was on down the leg side. He just felt all at sea.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think no, it's for me. It was more you could have played at least one proper spinner, maybe Arfad Minas or someone else in the squad.
That's true, actually. Yes, I didn't think of
That's the
that.
weird
Yes.
because you're paying five pacers, right? So it doesn't. Yeah, it's a bit weird, especially from an overall point of view as well. But
Shaheen Afridi,
uh,
Naseem Shah,
Haris Rauf, Mohammad
Haris Rao.
Hasnain.
That's a pretty good battery, no? In limited overs.
Yeah,
But I would have probably dropped if I had to. And also, like, what is wrong with Mir Hamza? Why can't I see him play ODI cricket? ODI cricket is closer to Test cricket in many ways than it is to T20 cricket. It's 10 overs. It's a long time. I mean, you have to bowl a first spell, a second spell, a third spell, middle overs, late death, and at the
but there you
start.
go. You answered your question. You need to bowl a second and third spell. That's why he's not selected.
That's true. That's not right. But my point being that it's like, why Shine Afridi over him? Shine in T20 cricket, it's just beginning and an end. And Shine Afridi does terribly at the end. He only does well in the first 3 balls. And that also is not that good anymore because he's become quite predictable. So I don't know. I just feel Mir Hamza should be given more of a chance to develop his skills as well. I don't think we give them that chance. But anyways, look, you've gone with your tried and tested. And you're just
Yeah,
hoping that they find form. You know,
yeah. It's just
I,
yeah.
I,
This
I
is
have
just
a
a
feeling it's the
balance.
same issue as what happened with Noman Ali, Sajid Khan, Zaid Mahmood. Just play all of them because we can't decide who to play. Because the
Yeah,
person who probably would have been dropped if you had to only pick 2 games would have been Sajid Khan before the second Test
yeah.
match, and he was your best performer. So I feel they don't even trust themselves to be able to make that decision. Let's play all of them and let them fight it out.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's kind of the weird thing. And then Australia as well. Come on to them. Strongest show. I think it's obviously Travis Head missing out. Well, I think he's on
Paternity.
personal leave or something. So that's the only surprise, but still a pretty strong
Very
Australian side. No other big surprise. I think Mitchell Marsh is the other one, but I think he's also on. paternity leave.
Paternity.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they're
so
both on paternity. So yeah, that's that.
um,
But
but yeah, so
predictions.
yeah, there we go. Look, it's the problem is Pakistan's best chance is actually in Melbourne, but it's the first game, and I don't expect Pakistan to do well in the first game. So uh, like it's I don't know. It's I can't see anything beyond a 3-0 Australia. It's although we talked about all these this squad has played a lot of test matches recently, but if you look at Australia and Australia experience, I don't know. It's going to be tough.
Yeah,
Karan
it's a
Ghulam's first
bogey
experience in
team.
Australia.
We've had our bogey
Uh,
team. This is it's Australia for a long time.
yeah,
I'm gonna say
I'm
Australia
not.
to
Yeah,
win.
I'm not being like pessimistic. I'm being pessimistic, and not for the sake of being pessimistic. I just logically thinking maybe if Pakistan are 2-0 down and Australia 2-0 up, and the rest half their squad for the third game, maybe then Pakistan have a chance.
So
But
I'll tell you
and you've
what
got
I
five pacers, right? You're taking Australia with pace in their home ground. I don't see that boding well for Pakistan.
yeah, but look, what I'll say is I know you look, let's separate the test cricket success, put it aside, right? Last game they played, Pakistan lost badly to England. ODI cricket, World Cup, last dead rubber. So think about the ODI cricket. I think Australia will win the series. I will say it's 2-1. I do give Pakistan. I think there is a bit of that fire in the belly now, knowing how to win. I know it's a different format, but Pakistan had been in a bad rut across formats. Sometimes that momentum, whether it's in a different format, still helps inject that bit of fire. And with Gillespie on an interim coach basis, but in Australia, I'm hoping there's Babar Azam being dropped, which is unthinkable 7, 8 months ago. I'm hoping it instills a bit of fire, right? And I'm being very optimistic with 2-1. I expect 3-0, but I think Pakistan might just pull it off somewhere. I'm Mohammad Hasnain may turn out to be a breakaway star before he then fades away like all the others. I don't know, but let's see. I mean, for me, I just think Pakistan just don't have any limited over spinners. Now, question of whether they could make Sajid Khan a limited over spinner, I don't know. I haven't seen his list A record. But I rate Salman Aga. I rate him. I just wish they, as you say, probably opted for more balance. But again, they couldn't choose which pacers they wanted,
Yeah,
and they didn't want to be blamed for choosing the same three pacers who failed us recently, right? Because then who would have been sat out? Hasnain, most likely. Oh, although I think it should be Shaheen Afridi, but that's another matter. But if it is Hasnain, I actually think Hasnain may end up being our best bowler. He's done
yeah,
well in
exactly.
Australia, right? So
Yeah,
he and Haris Rauf are for me your first bets in Australia, and Naseem Shah because he is a very talented bowler. So
yeah.
Shaheen Afridi for me is the question mark. But this whole he's now taking pictures with Mitchell Stark as the legend left armers of the world. I mean, for God's sake.
So yeah, I think Australia favorites. That's pretty much certain from what we're saying. But you never know about Pakistan cricket.
You never know. You never know. But yeah, there you go. Look, I guess we've covered a lot. There's a lot happening. We will have a lot more content coming up, especially as the World Test Championship cycle gets really, really hot. We're gonna obviously give our predictions, which once things get a bit clearer, and just look, stay tuned. The Australia Pakistan series is one that's imminent and one that we'll continue to cover. And please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.